The MCU is officially more in shambles than my favorite college football team. We gotta talk about this article from Variety. Alright, so obviously it's been no secret that I myself and a ton of other fans have not been enjoying Marvel recently, with declining in quality, and honestly, the characters not really that interesting. And they tried to set up Kang the Conqueror as like the next Thanos for these next couple phases of Marvel, and he's just honestly not been that menacing. He's not been that great or powerful. I mean, he got beat by a bunch of ants in Quantum Mania. So this article from Variety is talking about all these different issues that Marvel's been facing and some of the options that Kevin Feige and crew is actually looking at going with instead of what they've been doing. So you can see here the title of this article is Crisis at Marvel, which absolutely true. Jonathan Majors backup plans, the Marvels reshoots, reviving original Avengers, and more issues revealed. That's kind of crazy. They're thinking about reviving some of the original Avengers. And I thought that the deaths of like Iron Man and Black Widow, I thought they were great deaths, like for those characters, especially at that time. I thought they were very good deaths. I do think the stories could have played out a little bit differently to make their deaths make more sense, but they were still very good deaths for those characters, and I think the actors are very happy with where they left their characters. So let's dive a little bit into this article. I know that Jonathan Majors has had a lot of legal issues, which I think is one of the main focuses of this article. And they're thinking about either like firing him and recasting, or just moving completely away from Kang as the main villain, possibly onto Doctor Doom, which is mentioned in this article as well. So if you didn't know this, a lot of the Marvel people go on this retreat and start discussing and creating the road plan for Marvel in the coming phases, and starting to get together all these different projects, how they connect, all this different stuff. And apparently, according to an insider who spoke with a Variety, is that the most pressing issue to be discussed at the retreat was about what to do with Jonathan Majors. So that is very worrisome because they put all their eggs into one basket for Jonathan Majors being Kang the Conqueror, being the main villain for the MCU in this next phase or 2 or 3. And after all these crazy allegations and lawsuits, it's looking like they're probably gonna have to recast him or move away from him and move on to someone like Doctor Doom, which personally is my favorite option, because I think at the end of Quantum Mania, with the post-credit scene being the Council of Kangs and they're all played by Jonathan Majors, having every single variant of Kang the Conqueror be Jonathan Majors was a massive mistake. I even said that when I watched the movie. And now that this is happening, they're gonna have to do something to actually fix that and make it make sense as well, because Quantum Mania failed miserably. You also have Multiverse of Madness that failed miserably, which they talk about in here. Another main focus of this article is the predicted failure of the Marvels movie. And to be honest, that makes a whole lot of sense to me too, because Captain Marvel, which this is the sequel to, has like a 45% with audience on Rotten Tomato. And then you have Miss Marvel, who has a higher score admittedly, but not a lot of people watch that show. Nobody really cared all that much. I personally did watch it, but I found it really boring. I found the character herself interesting, but they changed her powers a lot from the comics. And then they also basically had no main villain, which was kind of strange. They really focused on culture, which was fine. But in terms of like a superhero show and her becoming a superhero, I don't think it mattered all that much. So one of the things that this article and this source and many other people and some analysts attribute this decline in the MCU to is that Marvel has been pushing out like a crazy amount of content, and there's a lot of different like things that go into them pushing out all that content that's causing it to fail. So here we have a quote from an analyst from the Wall Street. The Marvel machine was pumping out a lot of content. Did it get to the point where there was just too much and they were burning people out on superheroes? It's possible. And you know, honestly, they've had a ton of projects come out. They've started to focus on heroes and these characters that honestly aren't as interesting as the original Avengers were. And I don't think people really care all that much. They're trying to bring these like C and D tier characters all the way up to like an S tier, A tier. And people just aren't really going for it. It's just not been all that great. So this also goes on to a few of the predictions for the Marvels, and they're estimating that it comes in far below the $185 million Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. did on its debut weekend, which is just not good. It's not good because this movie reportedly cost $250 million to make, and I don't know if that includes the marketing for it, which honestly I feel like they haven't really marketed it all that much. But it is not looking good for the Marvels, and it's not looking good for the MCU. They're kind of scrambling from what I can tell. And one of the best indicators of this within this article is that Kevin Feige refused to decline on any of these situations. So it's kind of looking that way. Another thing this article talks about is that the director, after finishing the film, it's still in post-production, and the director moved on to the next film that they're working on, which is kind of interesting. You have a $250 million budget movie that you just directed, and it's in post-production, but instead of really focusing on that $250 million budget movie, you're going to move on to your next project and start working immediately. That to me is not a very good sign, because it doesn't seem like the director actually believes in this project and believes that the movie is decent. So that's another thing that the source is talking about here. It says if you're directing a $250 million movie, it's kind of weird for the director to leave with a few months to go, which I absolutely agree. So, and that's coming from a source that apparently is familiar with the production of the Marvels. So again, Marvel likely to have another failure. I think Loki has been a redeeming factor for Marvel as of late, and with the way this season's going, it looks like they might be able to fix it. But this article also mentions that, which is another issue. So apparently, because of the writer strikes, they're not able to rewrite the ending of Loki, and apparently it sets something up with Kang. I'm not sure. We'll find out whenever that comes, but it's really sad to see the fall of Marvel over the past phase or two. They've had a couple really good redeeming projects. Like, I loved Spider-Man No Way Home, even if the plot honestly wasn't all that great, just relied on nostalgia quite a bit. But also they've had Guardians of the Galaxy, they've had Loki. I enjoyed Moon Knight personally, but then they had just disastrous projects like Multiverse of Madness and She-Hulk, which we don't even talk about She-Hulk. I pretend that one doesn't even exist. Another thing that this article is trying to attribute to the downfall of Marvel is because they're pushing out so many projects in so little time, they're also underpaying and overworking their VFX artists, which honestly is true. There's a huge strike going on, and that's very aware among the fans in this superhero community, even among content creators, even if they sometimes won't talk about it because they want to stay in the good graces of Disney. I don't really care, so I'll talk about it. They give super unrealistic timelines for all of these VFX artists. They expect them to pump out the same quality, but with less time. And you can easily tell the downfall of Marvel, and whenever it comes to quality, they have a ton of quantity, but basically zero quality. It's just really bad, and it's getting to the point where you can't even watch it without being like, oh man. Like, sometimes I have to look away from the screen, especially when I watch like She-Hulk. I really just don't like that show. I'm sorry, I keep using it as an example. If you like She-Hulk, I'm sorry, but it's in my opinion, it's just not good. Whenever I watch a show like that, I sometimes literally have to look away from the screen because it's abysmal. It's ridiculous. Like, I watched the first Harry Potter, The Sorcerer's Stone, last night with my wife, and I gotta tell you, the CGI in that movie is better than the most recent Marvel projects, and that's sad. That is so sad. Another thing that I've been seeing recently on Twitter and other social medias is that after this article has come out, even more people close to Marvel and the production of a lot of these shows and movies that they're working on have come out and talked about everything that's happening. Like, apparently this article does mention the Blade reboot, which is not going very well. They've went through multiple writers, multiple directors. It keeps getting delayed. Apparently the actor that's going to play Blade is considering dropping out of the project now because he's getting really frustrated, which I don't blame him at all. Like, he's ready to work, I'm sure, and he's ready to play an awesome character like Blade. But apparently there's another thing that's come out about it, that someone familiar with the movie is saying that there was one point in the script where Blade is basically like a fourth main character, which is crazy because the movie's about him. It's ridiculous. It's getting too much. Another thing they're looking at apparently with the Jonathan Majors issue is just recasting him. They did this back in Iron Man 2 with Terrence Howard, and then they put Don Cheadle. So they've done this before, right? They're not afraid to do it. But at this point, where people they're just throwing Kang, like different variants of Kang in our face, and they're all Jonathan Majors, it's gonna raise some questions, especially after showing the Council of Kangs all being Jonathan Majors. It's gonna raise some questions about, like, where did this guy come from? Who is this guy? And people are paying a lot more attention to that. This article also mentions Disney purchasing 21st Century Fox, which gives them the rights now to the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Deadpool. We already know that they're bringing them in, but it's just been really strange because this purchase happened in 2019. Why haven't they been using these characters? Why haven't they been introducing them instead of people like Echo or Ironheart? Like, people, I know Ironheart's like actually an interesting character, but if you had to choose as an executive or even as a fan, what characters you got to see on screen first, would it be Ironheart and Echo, or would it be the freaking X-Men or the Fantastic Four? Like, that's just mind-boggling, and that's also something this article is talking about here. It's just really fascinating to me that Marvel decided to focus all their attention on these different characters. Miss Marvel, Echo, She-Hulk, like, it's really mind-blowing whenever you could have such incredible characters. All these characters within the X-Men, by the way, that, like, if they want female lead characters, look at the X-Men. Holy crap, they have so many great female characters. It would be incredible. I'm sorry, if you're choosing one of those other characters over, like, the X-Men, like the female X-Men characters, if you're wanting just females in the MCU in general, like, I don't know what you're thinking. Because in my opinion, like, the X-Men characters in general, there's just such a wide variety of powers and different backstories that you could just run with on individual level, but also at the X-Men level where you got the whole group together. It's kind of crazy. And that also includes, I mean, the Fantastic Four. I love the Fantastic Four, so I'm really excited to see that. And I really want to see Spider-Man and Human Torch be best friends in the MCU. That'd just be a dream come true. And then you have Deadpool, obviously, with Deadpool 3 coming out in the next probably like 2 to 3 years. With the strikes and everything, obviously, things are going to be delayed. Things are going to be canceled. We'll see how that goes whenever that comes to an end. But they're also considering reviving characters like Iron Man to make another Avengers movie with them. The only way I see this being okay is if they bring them in for Secret Wars. You can't just revive them and have another Avengers movie like Age of Ultron or something, or the first one. You can't do that. That's just not going to happen, especially now that you've introduced the multiverse. You can make it make sense with the multiverse, which is nice, but you've introduced the multiverse and Kang the Conqueror being the main villain of that multiverse. You can't just have him come back and be like, oh, yeah, he's going to fight Kang. Like, if you're going to have them fight, make it be on, like, Battle World for Secret Wars. Like, we'll have something's going to have to happen. They're going to have to rewrite a bunch of stuff, introduce new shows or movies. They're going to bring all this together like they did for Infinity War and for Endgame. I don't know if I can see them doing that at this point. It's kind of really far gone. But the article from Variety does say to not write the Marvel obituary. They say it'd be ill-advised because they do have a good track record of adjusting to what fans want. But at this point, fans have been calling for a few years now for them to adjust, and they haven't done it. So we'll see if Kevin Feige can actually convince the executives over at Marvel, over at Disney, to actually listen to the fans and do what we want them to do. If they don't, it's not going to be looking good because they're probably starting to run out of money for some of these projects. I mean, they spent so much money on all these different shows, all these different movies, and they just absolutely flopped. All right, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know what you guys think about this. Is the Marvel Universe actually on the decline? Is it at the bottom of that hill? Is it done? Is it completely in shambles? In my opinion, it kind of seems like it is, and it kind of seems like the executives and Kevin Feige over at Marvel and Disney also realize that because they're looking at a complete shift, even thinking about bringing back Dead Avengers, which would completely ruin their story, in my opinion. But we'll see where it goes. I appreciate you guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.